We knew that we want to do that moment of crucifixion, but we always backtrack and walk back. What are the key things that we have to introduce so like we know that we have prepared you properly, introducing all of those elements. We have slowly prepared the player to actually say yes. My name is Paweł Sasko and I'm a quest director in CD Projekt Red. I am responsible for quests, open world and cinematic departments in our games. Today, we are going to be breaking down the Sinnerman storyline.
I wanted you by my side when my soul departs this world.
When we started working on Cyberpunk 2077, we knew that we are building like a really dark and gruesome world. You are pretty much hated by the society, by the people ruling the world. And we knew that in this really dark world, we need some kind of contrast. And that contrast we wanted to look actually for in the connection to actually other human beings in a spiritual life. The whole quest starts off with you meeting one character that wants to actually hire you for a very peculiar job. He actually hires you to murder someone. You can see here in the scene how we are in Cyberpunk 2077 constructing the staging. You're looking at the street and then there is a car that you're supposed to chase just passing by, so you're pretty much ready to go. This is not, of course, an accidental. We pay a lot of attention to those small like staging details to make sure that you as a player, you're really set up for the most important thing that you want to see. We call it a sweet spot. So the V is in this place sitting and actually looking. This is a sweet spot. It provides you with the best possible place for you to actually see the action, even though we never actually cut. We never really force you to look at the specific things. We're actually trying to, with invisible hand of a designer, lead you to the place that will provide you with the best possible experience. So right now we are at the moment when we are about to meet actually Joshua Stevenson. And you can see here what is the setup. Actually, it's really simple and basic when you see it on the screen, but actually it takes a lot of work to actually set it up like this. You can see those lines actually leading you up straight to him. You know, there's the sun behind it. When you're getting into the car, we switch the time and we switch the weather so that as a player, you literally have the best possible experience. And this is the reason, of course, it's extremely basic when you think about it, but you're really very clearly led by the action leading up here. You can see him walking there and your sweet spot naturally is sort of next to him. You're sort of naturally next to him, and when you walk, you always kind of land here. You can see here that there's already this NCPD guy standing in the front of the car, and you will see and observe throughout the scene how we are dynamically changing the staging throughout that scene. It's really important because in Cyberpunk, you are in first person, and the thing is that we don't have cuts. And we had to figure out how we can change the plans, how we can basically make it happen that you will be in different plans and you will see different things happening.
You're protecting a murderer! Drop it or I shoot!
Here, unfortunately, Bill doesn't react to Vasquez trying to warn him. And here we have the important moment of introduction of Joshua Stevenson. He walks in out of that car and then stops him. And that moment when he puts his hand on a gun, this is basically meant to signify that he's done with the killing. He doesn't want this anymore. As you approach them, you can see how the staging is dynamically changing. The car door just opened and Rachel is going to join us. And here you can see another change of the staging, out from that truck that is like positioned here. You can see this guy walk out from there. You can see that we are using an extremely simple tricks from theater. And I think it's an interesting thing that we really rarely talk about. We actually took a lot of lessons from the theater and how it's done there. You can see here basically a truck driver joins us for a moment. Vasquez gets rid of him. We had to do that a bit to be sure to explain why actually this whole road here is blocked and why there is actually only that truck standing there and there's no cars. Of course, we had to turn off the traffic in that point because it would turn into nightmare. Here you can see a really simple trick actually from theater again. When we want to direct your eye as a player, what we do, the actor changes and that addresses another actor directly. Here, actually, he is talking to her, she responded, and now he turned back to us, so we know, okay, that this plan is again the more important one because he started gesturing. And we don't really need to do anything, actually, to make sure that as a player, you are looking at what we want you to look. In this case, as a player, I have a choice to basically opt out from this quest and decide not to do it. There's actually a lot of people that never really discovered this quest line because at this point, they decided to just not go for it, which is really interesting because we knew that we are touching at topics that maybe for some people won't be this comfortable. That's why we gave that option, I believe, 4 times. You can say that you don't want to move forward with this. Now you can see another pretty interesting change of the staging. Johnny Silverhand appears literally here. You can see that we actually wanted to encourage the player to go with that quest. The beginning's kind of weird, the way it started. So we were like, okay, we need like kind of like a notch. That's why Johnny says something that isn't a complete snore fest, and that's why he says, I think the next line is that I'm never talking to you again if you don't go with them. That's the push, this subtle push that we needed for the player. In CD Projekt Red, we believe that it's really important to give the players content that we call an opt-in content, a moment when you as a player, you can decide that you want to join something, that you want to play something. And actually, Sinnerman is one of those quests that so many players completely missed. For us, it's really important to design things that will basically depend on what you have done as a player and how much time you have invested. Before we actually keep on moving forward, I need to talk to you about the signal and noise theory. The signal is everything that is important in your scene. Everything that you want the player to know and get to and understand, because otherwise they will lose the plot. The noise is everything that player can do in the same time and not consciously listen. Let's say there is a moment when you're going up to the building together with Takemura, for a reconnaissance. So the signal is quite low and the noise is high, because as a player I can jump around, I don't have to listen to him, I can look back, I can just go naked or throw grenades, I can actually do a lot of things. Later, when we get to the roof, I sit down and I focus on Takemura. From that point on, we know that player is focused on that guy. So the signal is high and the noise is low. So the scenes in the cars are actually very specific type of that scenes. We can basically limit the player's camera cone. So in every scene, you can actually see in Cyberpunk that you can move that camera to this distinct places, and we normally give you like slightly more that you can put some characters off center, because otherwise it felt too forceful, but you feel in control as a player. It's not that, there are like hard borders, I would say hard walls on the sides when I move my camera. In this scene, it was really important for us to introduce first and most important story threads. And what do you actually find out here? You find out here that he is a convict. You find out here that he has his old days numbered and he is going to be killed no matter what. And he has decided to really do something with the time he has left. And it's a very important story thread that we were playing a lot with Cyberpunk 2077, which is existentialism. Philosophers always said, in the thread of existentialism, that our life has no meaning unless we give it a meaning. Joshua Stevenson here says that my days are numbered, so I decided to do something with them and actually do something meaningful. In Cyberpunk 2077, we have this concept of braindances. You can buy a braindance, and braindance is a recording of an actor, but a recording that contains everything. All the bodily functions of that actor are being reflected on you as you experience that braindance. For Joshua Stevenson, it was kind of obvious that he can actually make everyone else experience the same thing as him. And for him, it will be dying on a cross. Now we are going to visit a family that has been really badly harmed by Joshua Stevenson. What happens at the very beginning of this scene, you can see there is a moment when actually Joshua points out a question that a lot of players will have in their mind, and he doesn't see himself as any kind of messiah. Again, this is a fairly simple storytelling trick that we are using very often in CD Projekt, which is that if we feel throughout the scene that there is a question that most likely is somewhere there, at the back of your head, we'll address it directly in that scene at that very moment. And here, of course, the crucifixion is being mentioned for the first time. And again, that might be a shocker of sort for the player, that something like that is going to happen. And here you can see, actually, we provide the player a variety of reactions. Probably most people will feel, whoa, that's insane. Right? Like probably most people will feel like this. That's why this choice is there, actually. It's really important for us to provide the player with that.
I've seen every kind of dirtbag in this city. This Jesus shit ain't fooling me.
A lot of players actually realized what we have done here, and it's the Last Supper. This is how we called it. Very early, actually, throughout working on that quest, we actually realized that we want to build it like this. We wanted to sort of recreate those iconic moments Rachel, the corpo one with the pink hair. She's basically playing a role of Judas here.
So I'm prepared to pay you double what he's promised you to quietly walk away.
And that was, of course, very deliberate choice. We just always want to play with those threads, and I love that detail. What's really interesting is even through the fact that our characters, sometimes have so little, I would say, exposition as Rachel has. She's one of the more liked characters in our game. There were so many requests about a romance story for her. So it just shows to me that even though we had very little space, I would say, to show her as a character, she was shown in intriguing enough way to make actually people being drawn to her. As a player, you are experiencing a moment of actually discovering, the last, I would say, important elements or details regarding the story of Joshua Stevenson and Rachel and their motivation. This is the first moment when we actually name, of course, the braindance, and we call it the passion. There's a very interesting trick, actually, that we have learned, as storytellers throughout working on Cyberpunk and Witcher 3, which is that if you want the player to think certain things, you sometimes need a character, another character that will provide that point. And that is Johnny Silverhand. He actually provides a very important point to that whole story and gives you much more context. And later, actually, V is going to use his own words. And V is even surprised. And V is even surprised by the way how he is actually approaching the whole topic. Because we are used to Johnny being cynical, asshole kind of a character, sometimes saying things that he shouldn't, or doing things how he shouldn't. He's pissing us off. In this case, he's actually surprisingly mindful and surprisingly insightful when he talked to him.
He's the real rebel.
This, for a player, is sort of providing this, I would say, interpretation frame. As a player, you have this reference of okay, Johnny's actually approaching this topic really seriously. This is a really serious topic, and we wanted to make sure as creators that we're actually approaching that really respectfully, because we knew that this might be a subject that was very close for a lot of our players. Therefore, we wanted to do it properly. Now, this bit is really important for us. In the Bible, it's called the prayer. Of course, this is the moment when Jesus is praying, experiencing, a lot of doubt. As we arrive here, we see that Joshua is kind of prepared already to act out his role, and he's asking you, to sit down with him. You can really pick what you want to say, and look what actually V picks up. You're a true rebel, revolutionary. This is literally what Johnny told us before. As a player, I can actually opt into that point of view that Johnny kind of suggested, that maybe actually being a real rebel is really being a symbol for others and leaving something. Joshua Stevenson asks you to actually pray with him. And he asks you, okay, will you join me in that? And again, as a player, you can decide not to do it. You can say that you don't really want to do that. You can see there are actually different choices. So you can decide, I just don't want to pray with you. Or you can actually do it. And when I was observing YouTubers and streamers actually playing, a lot of them actually went with that. And a lot of them actually decided to actually be there with him. Because I think that throughout that quest, that empathy for him was built enough that even if you yourself as a player and then your V are not believing in anything you want to believe, you will often decide to just, through the empathy, decide to actually, I want to join him in that because I want to be there with him. And here you can see, V actually, assuming the pose for the praying. And that was an actually really important bit for us. It's interesting because a lot of players actually picked that fourth one, praying in their own way. When they decided to pray, they actually went with this one. And then this is the moment when actually Joshua Stevenson says,
I'd like you to wield the hammer. Nail me to the cross.
And that is the surprise. That is the moment that we've been preparing the player all that time for. When we were designing this, it came out from a pitch that was written by one of my designers, Przemek Tarczyński. Przemek came up with an idea of a very, very short pitch. I absolutely loved that pitch. And I thought that, okay, we're gonna do it. This is amazing. But the quest at first was about being there with Joshua Stevenson, and it ended at the point when you delivered him to Braindance Studio, and that was it. That was the end of the quest. I felt like this is a complete missed opportunity. Because the thing is that our interactive scene system allows you to actually be in the shoes of the character and really be there and really feel it. Therefore, we need to build up the story in a way that here you will say yes. And we knew from the very beginning that we want to do that passion, that moment of crucifixion, but to do it well and do it properly, we had to build that story well. When you have a goal that you're going to, we always backtrack and walk back. What are the scenes and what are the key things that we have to introduce before, and this is how you get to it. So like when there's this main moment, we know as a designers that we have prepared you properly, introducing all of those elements, introducing the characters, their character traits, their motivations, explaining everything, going through with you through everything. We basically ask the player, hey, just join me for a trip. Then you join him for a trip and you drive with Joshua, and it turns out he says like, okay, join me, let's go together to Gloria and Juleka's house. So there is basically saying yes to things. We have slowly prepared the player to actually say yes as well here. And that is the whole purpose, and the whole purpose of that structure. It might be shocking actually, because he literally tells you what you are going to do here. Wield the hammer, nail me to the cross. And the thing is, like, we felt we need to say it before players agree to that, because for a lot of people it could have been very disturbing. We didn't really want to like put anyone through experiences that they want to have. And as you can see here, as a player, you can still again say no. And you can again say, you know what, I'm not going to do it. I was pushing my designers. I was asking them, please use our interactive scene system as well as we only can, and put me in the shoes of that soldier. I really want to be there, and I want to feel every single nail. And we walk you through every single step so that you will actually understand what's going on, but also you will live through it and you will actually experience that. It starts from actually you picking up that hammer and nails and moving on towards Joshua. As you can see, we are taking the time with this shot a lot. It's very slow, and it's very slow very deliberately. We believe as CD Projekt and as creators that we really should give our characters space to happen on the screen. They need screen time to really be who they are, so that we really understand we cannot rush moments like this. There's nothing chasing you. There's no new objective that is there. We made sure that we really take time with everything. So as you slowly start walking towards the cross, you can see actually Joshua, there's nothing else going on behind us. And then every single time when you hammer those nails, every single action is an interaction. Every single time when she's supposed to hammer that nail, you need to decide to do it as a player. You can see it here, you know, every single time. It's 3 times that she has to do it. Now, an important thing here, you can actually quit as a player. And that's yet another way for us to say, okay, I'm not going to do it. You know, just do it yourself. I'm done with that. I'm leaving this place. Again, it's just a sign of this opt-in design that I talked about. And this is extremely important. We actually wanted the player to be the one who's doing the final thing. So at the moment when you have actually nailed him to the cross, we need to like put that cross up. So that's why as a player you are going there, and then there's this moment when you're actually pushing the button. And you can see here, she is actually waiting, right? There is this moment of actually, after you making a choice, the reaches out, stops for a moment, and only then pushes that button. She doesn't push that button instantly, because it's not an action sequence that you're trying to kill someone. It's a very deliberate choice. That's why after a choice, there's an immediate action of her reaching out a hand, but then she stops and does it slowly and only then pushes that button. It was really important for us to play with those subtleties and with the timings here. What I really like in that scene is actually behavior of Johnny. He is really respectful because he understands this probably even better than we does at that given time. And he respects Joshua for what he's doing. And that scene actually with Johnny Silverhand at the very end of The Last Supper meant to telegraph to you as a player why Johnny is actually so respectful. Because he considers him an actual true revolutionary, an actual person who really wants to do a change in the world. One moment that I actually really love is this moment that you are just asked to be there. Actually, Joshua is slowly dying here. And as a player, you're just asked to be with him through that moment. And that is the passion. I am sure that someone will get angry on us. I'm sure that someone will get concerned and so on. But again, is it worth it to, like give up your artistic integrity and your artistic bravery, artistic responsibility for like one person out of 100 who's gonna be angry. It's not, really, We are not providing a product for consumers. We are making art for our audience to experience. That's the way I think about those things. It's really important, though, to do it properly, right? Of course, in the game, we cannot like have only topics like this because it will become a pontification or whatever you want to call it instead of the game, right? It's still an entertainment. But again, you can deliver an ambitious entertainment and you can just deliver a C-class entertainment. And we want to do an ambitious entertainment because this is what our audience is. This is what our players expect. And I think this is a lot of players actually appreciate.